Hi, this is Deb Wenger. Today we're going to talk about AP style. So AP style, developed by the Associated Press, is a format or structure for the way language is used in many text stories. And there are literally thousands and thousands of rules contained in the AP style guide. I really want you more than anything to understand how to use the guide, and that's why your quizzes on this topic by and large are going to be open book or open app or open online access. But there are some rules that are so commonly used that it's to your benefit to know them well enough to be able to just make the right choice as you're writing. Otherwise, it's really going to slow down your work. So let's talk about AP style rule number 1. So when you are including the name of a city in your story, you might think it would be helpful to the reader to know what state that city is located in. So AP style does not follow standard postal code abbreviations. That would be too easy. And instead, they ask that you spell out the state name in its entirety when you include the name of a city that people may not know the location of in your story. So big-time cities like Atlanta, Miami, San Francisco, New York, those don't require any kind of state designation. But if you're writing about Pearl, Mississippi, for example, you're going to want to have Pearl, Mississippi so that people know where this city is located. So here's an example of an AP story actually produced by the Associated Press where you'll see this in action. So it's all about cities that are banning sledding of all things because of liability issues. So you see there Dubuque, Iowa, Columbus, Ohio, Omaha, Nebraska, etc. And you'll note how when they include the city and the state name, they follow the city with a comma and then spell out the state in its entirety. Rule number 2, titles. Now, this is a rule that a lot of students seem to struggle with. You only capitalize formal titles when they come right before an individual's name. So if you're using the title after the person's name, you lowercase. So in our example here, Mayor John Appleseed signed the proclamation. The word mayor is capitalized. Obviously, it's at the start of a sentence as well. But if our example said, in a surprise move, comma, Mayor John Appleseed signed the proclamation, you would still capitalize mayor. And then you note, if you add the title after the person's name, you lowercase. So John Appleseed, comma, Mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, attended the banquet. So here you see this in action, a story about an Ole Miss student who was attacked on a trip to Austin, Texas for a football game. Note that one of the fraternity presidents interviewed has his title lowercased following his name. Note even that the Assistant Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students at Ole Miss, that title is lowercased after Thomas Sparky Reardon's name. Now I guarantee you that there would be students who would capitalize Assistant, Vice, Chancellor, Dean, students in that title, and they would be wrong. Okay, AP style rule number 3. When you have a number that's below 10, you spell it out. So you note in our example, Jody bought 3 apples. If that number is 10 and above, you use the figure. So 12 mangoes, we use the numeral 12. For percentages, you also use numerals with the word percent, not the percent sign. So here is an example story in CNN Money that violates the rule we just talked about, right? It's 8.3% without using the word percent. So what's up with that? Well, I'll tell you what's up with that. AP style is just that. It's AP style. Now, many news organizations around the country have adopted AP style, but some have their own style guides. Some use much of AP style, but then supplement with their own style guide. So even though this set of rules is commonly used in journalism schools and will be used in this class, it's not the only style guide out there. Other potential reason for seeing this percent sign is that somebody just made a mistake. Okay, AP style rule number 4. So when you're using a month with a specific date, so you know that the next basketball game is February 6th, you can go ahead and abbreviate the following months: January, February, August, September, October, November, and December. If it's not one of those months, you spell it out. So you would spell out June 2. You wouldn't abbreviate JUN period. And you also would spell out the month when it's a month that stands alone. So you say, Black History Month is the month of February. You don't abbreviate. Or if you use it with just a year. So the Summer Olympics will take place in July 2016. No ordinal numbers, so an ordinal number would be second or fifth. You would just, when you write a date, use the numeral, so June 12, August 12. And again, remember the rules on when you abbreviate the month and when you don't. Seasons are never capitalized. So I see this mistake pretty routinely because we love to capitalize things like fall semester or spring semester. Guess what? No need to capitalize. Keep it lowercase. So here's an example. Hey, what's wrong with this picture? It's the month of September, which is one of the months that we can abbreviate, but we note that it isn't. So again, you're going to see plenty of AP style mistakes if you look around at content posted online or even in your local newspaper perhaps. But the AP style rules say that that should be September, abbreviated SEPT, period, with the date 16. AP style rule number 5. So street, avenue, boulevard, those are addresses that are only abbreviated when you include the number. So you see at the bottom here, 123 Public Relations Boulevard, 12 Brady Street. Road and other related causeways like Court, Drive, Lane, Way are not abbreviated. So note below 1 Championship Road. So if you don't have the street number, you don't abbreviate at all. If you do have the street number, you abbreviate the words street, avenue, and boulevard. Here's an example of a story. It's talking about a location at the corner of University Drive. So even if we had a number, we wouldn't abbreviate that. And Lamar Avenue, which if we knew it was 1214 Lamar Avenue, we would abbreviate. AP Style Rule 6. Composition titles. So if you are using the name of a magazine or newspaper in your story, they're not italicized, just capitalized. So note below the New York Times. So no italics, just capitalized words. For composition titles like books or movies, TV shows, you do use quotation marks. So you see below the TV show Friends, the book The Kite Runner. So here's an example. Bob Odenkirk plays the lawyer Saul Goodman on Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad's TV show, it is put in quotation marks. Another show that may be a spin-off, Better Call Saul, is going to have quotation marks around it. AP Style Rule number 7, money. So if the dollar amount is an even amount, you just use the dollar sign and the numeral. If it's an uneven amount, so it's $1.15 as you see here, you use the dollar sign 1 decimal point 15. You write out the word cents versus using the symbol, and use exact figures up to $1 million. So after that point, you basically use the dollar symbol, the numeral, and then the designation. So if it's a million, you write out the word million. Billion, write out the word billion, and so on. So here's an example: Super Bowl tickets, estimated at about $2,600 each. And you note how, because it is a exact amount, we have no decimal point with zeros after it, or decimal point with cents, because we're not dealing with cents. Just an example of how numbers are being used appropriately here. This is a number well over 10, and of course we are seeing it written as a numeral. 40%, again, we see the correct use of percent in this story. No big surprise, because you'll note in the upper left that this is a story produced by the Associated Press. All right, punctuation for AP style rule number 8. Periods and commas go inside quotation marks. That should sound familiar to you since we've already talked about that. But here's a rule that just sends my English major friends into a tizzy. AP style says no comma before the conjunction in a simple series. So my ice cream was red, comma, white, no comma, and blue. And another point that I think is important to make, because I see these used and abused, is no exclamation points in AP style. So you might want to say, if somebody was extremely enthusiastic about something, then you might want to say, when you are attributing it, said enthusiastically, but don't use an exclamation point. So back to our ticket price story. And here we have an example of a simple series. Need to make room for media, comma, cameras, no comma, and security. All right, AP style rule number 9, almost done here. For academic degrees, the preferred form is to avoid abbreviations. So Joe has a doctorate in American history, not Joe has a PhD in American history. You're going to be doing a lot of your stories on campus. A lot of you will be talking to professors, and so that's a good thing for you to know. For a specific degree, capitalize the degree name but not the subject. So this mistake gets made a lot. For some reason, people always want to capitalize the subject. So if you're talking to an engineering major for your story, you do not capitalize the word engineering. Now, if you're talking to someone and saying they're about to get a Bachelor of Arts in journalism, here at the Meek School, journalism would be capitalized because that's the actual degree name. But if you say somebody's getting a Bachelor of Science in Integrated Marketing Communication, Integrated Marketing Communication is lowercase because that is not the degree name itself. Okay, here's an example, an obit. You note that we don't say that this person was a professor of capital political science. We say professor of lowercase political science. So ages. For ages, we always use figures. So make sure that you are not writing out somebody's age, even if they're less than 10 years old. If the age is used as an adjective or as a substitute for a noun, then you hyphenate. So here, let's look at the adjective. A 21-year-old student. 21-year-old describes the student. Look at the noun substitute. The contest is for 18-year-olds. So you could replace that word 18-year-olds and you could say the contest is for young people. So if you can replace it with a noun, you would hyphenate. Note through all of these examples that we are using numerals, not spelling out the ages. And if you're talking about an age range, you would not use apostrophes. So somebody in their 20s, you're going to write 20s, not 20 apostrophe s. So can you spot the mistake in this story? Well, the headline looks good, right? So 9-year-old is describing Zico, but look at the first paragraph. The last sentence in the first paragraph, somebody didn't catch that. 9-year-old Zico should have been the numeral 9. However, later on in the story, you'll note that they do get it right when they reference the age 12. Rule number 11, names. So always use a person's first and last name the first time they're mentioned in a story. Then you default to last names only on second reference. So the second time you refer to them, you use their last name only. Now there are some exceptions. You know, if you're interviewing a 4-year-old, you're probably not going to call him Cunningham throughout the story. So it would be okay to call him Billy. Or if you have two people with the same last name in the story. If you're interviewing me and my husband, you know, you're going to have to say either Deb and Mitch, or the husband or the wife, however you want to say it. But it would get confusing to just keep calling us Wenger because you wouldn't be sure which one of us was speaking. This is a tough one. A lot of students have a hard time giving up those courtesy titles, especially when they're interviewing professors. So much as it's going to kill you, you don't call somebody Dr. Wenger on second reference. You're going to call my husband just Wenger on second reference. Unless, again, it's part of a direct quotation, so somebody else is referring to him as Dr. Wenger, or you need to differentiate between two people with the same last name. So in a story about the two of us, you could distinguish between him and me by calling him Dr. Wenger and just calling me Wenger. All right, so here's an example. First time Carson Otter is referenced in this story. His full name is used. On subsequent references, his last name only is used. AP style rule number 12, we're at the end. So times. The exact time when an event has occurred or will occur usually doesn't even make it into a story unless you're doing a preview of a big concert or a preview of a rally. Then the time may be necessary because people may be planning to go and want to know what time it is. Sometimes time of day is important. So when that happens, use figures, with the exception of noon and midnight, and then you spell it out. And you basically use a colon to separate hours from minutes, but you don't bother with colon 00. So 1 p.m. you're going to write numeral 1, P period, M period. 3:30 a.m., 3:30 A period, M period. Here's our example. Again, the Carson Otter story. The attack on him occurred early in the morning around 2 a.m. So figuring that the time that this happened was relevant to the story, it was included, and note that it was just written as numeral 2, A period, M period. So you are going to take a quiz on AP style. You'll log on to Blackboard and access this under exams. Be sure that you have some sort of notes from this lecture available to you, or perhaps you have an AP style book, or you have online access or the app. But familiarize yourself enough with this so that you can answer these questions just based on your knowledge, and then double check yourself if you have to. Good luck!